Hey everyone. A couple of weeks ago, Minecraft introduced player input predicates, which allow Datapack creators a much cleaner way of getting which keys the players are pressing. We can now detect the movement keys, jumping, sprinting, and crouching far more easily than any other method we've had before. When that was first introduced, I put together a quick video of a Super Mario Level 1-1 remake called Super Piglin Bros. And there were a lot of comments on that one suggesting other classic games or arcade games to recreate. So that is what I've started here. I have these little arcade cabinets I've made. I'm going to go through the 3 cabinets I've made, then explain what my vision for the future of this project is, and how they work so that if you want to create your own cabinets, you can create your own based off of these. This first cabinet is less of a game and more a proof of concept. It's called MC Paint, which is supposed to be kind of a joke on Microsoft's MS Paint. And it's just a tiny little paint program. So I press this New Game button, it'll clear the screen. I can use the arrow keys to move this little brush around. I can press the jump key to paint, and I can press the sprint key to cycle through colors. So I can also, if I want, hold a key to move faster in that direction, and I apparently don't know what my own logo looks like. That is really lopsided. But yeah, it's basically more to figure out how I wanted input to work, how I wanted interaction with the screen to work, just so I had a clean base and a clean API to work off of for the future projects. The second arcade cabinet I have is the classic Snake arcade game. So this is typical Snake, arrow keys to move, and the goal is to eat the orange pellets and grow as long as possible without running into yourself. This one also is the first one that has a score display. So we have the current score on the left and the high score on the right. But yeah, other than that, it's just classic Snake. You can see if I run into myself, there's a little death animation and then a game over message telling you to press sprint to restart. Pressing sprint, and off we go again. So yeah, not a ton to it. It's pretty much just Snake, but you know, it was a fairly simple, straightforward first actual game to make with the system. The third arcade cabinet I have is this little Pac-Man clone called Pac-Mine. You can see it's a very straightforward Pac-Man clone. You are this little miner trying to avoid these creepers and trying to mine all of this gilded blackstone out of the maze. But yeah, the goal is still the same. You want to get every piece. There's little power pellets that make it so the creepers run away from you and you can eat them. And when you finish the level, it just starts over with a faster game speed and a shorter lifetime on those power-ups. Other than that, the ghosts are designed to behave the same way they do in Pac-Man. Each color has a slightly different personality, and I've done my best to replicate those here. And yeah, it's Pac-Man in Minecraft. You can see here, slightly faster game speed. You move faster, the little creepers chasing you move faster. And I don't know if it's noticeable at first, but yeah, that power-up is a fair bit shorter each time you level up. And then eventually gets to a point where doesn't actually do anything, it just makes the ghosts startle and turn around but you don't have any opportunity to eat them anymore. This is actually my best run yet. The high score is a lie from when I was testing and before I had all of the systems implemented. This is more stressful than demoing a tiny data pack should be. Okay, there I go. But yeah, and then when you die, there's little animation of the ghosts moving around randomly. So that's it for the arcade cabinets I've created. Next, I'll go a bit into what my long-term vision for this project is. So making these arcade cabinets was definitely a challenge, and it was a lot of fun. But I think it would be really cool to have an entire little data pack arcade of a bunch of different arcade cabinets made by all sorts of data pack creators. And so for that end, I'm going to be spending the rest of the video explaining how these cabinets work and how you can make your own data pack that integrates with these cabinets. So you can have your own cabinet, sharing a world with all of these. The easiest way to get started with creating your own arcade cabinet is to just take one of the existing ones. So these are all structures. They're all 32 blocks long and deep and 48 blocks tall. And so they all fit in a single structure. And we can take that and create a duplicate of whichever arcade cabinet we want. And then we can start making it our own. So if we wanted to make, a Space Invaders type arcade cabinet, we might switch this to save mode and call it the Space Cabinet. And we are already partway there. Let me turn off these grid lines. So then there's a handful of things that need to be edited on an arcade cabinet by arcade cabinet basis. If we go into the guts of the machine, we can see that there's these 4 little command blocks that run everything. These 2 are common across all of the arcade cabinets, whereas these 2 will need to be changed. But the only change is just changing which function gets called in these. So instead of it being maze game tick, we might call it space game tick for our theoretical Space Invaders game. From there, the only other real change that needs to happen are cosmetic changes. So you can change this text display entity to be whatever name you want. You could change the colors to be whatever you want. You could rearrange the buttons, all of that. So those are the only real changes that need to happen. I'm going to go into a few of the things that are included in this structure. Clearly there's those command blocks inside, there's the overall shape of the cabinet. There's also a couple of entities that are included with the structure. If you look here, there's an armor stand. This is positioned so that the screen fills the physical player's screen when they look at it. And this is the entity that the player spectates when they start playing the game. There's also, if I can remember the right F3 code, a little marker down in this corner that is the entity that all of the main arcade functions are run off of. Because it's positioned in this corner, placing stuff on the screen is just a relative offset in the positive X and Y directions, which makes it very convenient for placing things on the screen. Other than that, I guess the main other thing is the screen itself. So there are 2 layers to the screen. There's this layer that is visible to the player, and then there's a layer behind that, which if I just fill the first layer with air, you'll be able to see. So then there's this back layer which contains your arcade cabinet's kind of metadata. So this back layer doesn't ever change, or at least, I mean, I guess you could have something where it changes, but the idea is that this has kind of your default reset state somehow encoded into it. In the case of the maze, these different colors are different metadata. So orange and blue and black stone are all different types of walls. The green are corridors and the yellow are intersections. But yeah, it just contains different information. These all get cloned over to the front layer, and then different blocks are swapped out for other blocks at the start of the game. But that contains, all the information the ghosts need for knowing when they can turn, when they can move, all of that. But yeah, that's everything that's included in the structure. And I guess next I'll go and take a look at how the data pack is laid out. I'm over here in Visual Studio Code with the arcade data pack open. As you can see here, there are 4 different namespaces within this data pack. These bottom 3 are for each of the arcade cabinets, and this top one is the shared data pack that all of the arcade cabinets can access. If we look in here, there's mostly just functions for putting stuff on the screen or reading stuff from the screen. So this item folder has functions for adding an item to the screen, clearing it from the screen, changing what item is displayed, or moving it. This screen one has functions for changing the blocks on the screen, as well as for looking at the metadata layer to see what block is at a position. And then this text folder has a bunch of different functions for different styles of text to display on the screen. All of these are macro functions, so you'll be calling it usually with an entity, usually with that screen entity that's in the bottom left corner, and it will get the X and Y coordinate and whatever other information it needs to display whatever you're calling on the screen. And then if you want examples of how all of these work, that's what these other 3 data packs are for. So you can look in here, we set some values on that marker. Here we have an example of, using the item function to put the brush on the screen in the first place. We have all of this data gets added to the data screen entity, and then we call the item add function using that metadata. But I'm not going to go too in depth on all of these. If you have questions, you can feel free to ask in the Discord. You can dig through these as much as you want for inspiration or just copying commands for your own projects. That's what they're there for. Well, thank you for watching. If you want to play any of these arcade games and try to beat my high score in MC Paint or, either of the actual games that have high scores, feel free to do so. If you decide you want to try to create your own arcade cabinet, there will be a thread on the Discord for technical support, for questions about the existing data packs, and for sharing whatever arcade cabinet creation you come up with. Hopefully, by the next release or by the end of the year, we'll have a fun collaborative arcade built by a ton of different creators. But yeah, that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.